In Black Journal, I'll talk with Danny Burton, the man who spent 32 years in prison on a wrongful murder conviction. Plus, Wayne County changes its approach to handling public defense cases. You don't want to miss this very important show. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Ally, Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Imagine being locked up for 32 years for a crime you didn't commit. That's what happened to my first guest. He was wrongfully convicted of murder in 1987 at the age of 19 and sentenced to life in prison. Now he is free after witnesses recanted and a prisoner spoke up about the real killer. Joining me now is Danny Burton, along with a member of his legal team, attorney Madeline Sinkovich. Thanks both of you for being here.
Thank you for welcoming me here, Steve.
Yeah. So Danny, I can't read about or think about your story without thinking how close in age the two of us are. You're a few years older than I am, and it's really hard for me to even fathom what things happened to you over the majority of your adult life compared to what has happened to me. I can't picture the last 32 years of my life being what they were for you. So I'm happy that you're out and experiencing life in a different way now, but I want to start with you telling us what that was like. What was it like to spend 32 years in prison for something you didn't do?
Well, I'll say it was a nightmare. A nightmare. I was finally awoken that the day I was released. Well, actually, I didn't know I was going to be released that day. But my lawyer, he called up to the facility and expressed to me that I would be having a hearing. I thought the hearing was about, gathering evidence, but at the time it was about my release. Mm-hmm. And it was a joyful day that day.
Yeah, yeah.
Like to say, I couldn't believe it once I was leaving the compound that I was a free man.
So let's go back to 1987. You're 19 years old. What were the circumstances that led to this conviction?
Well, the circumstances were a friend of mine was shot and killed. At the time, he was visiting a home on a house that was on Lisdale. I had no clue about what happened, but I was told that someone had shot him and robbed him. And thereafter, I was arrested for his murder. I couldn't understand why, but police was insisting on that I was the one who committed the crime. I was saddened by my friend's death, but I was hoping that someday we would come to this day to find out who did it. And by the assistance of Miss Claudia Whitman, we finally found out who
really did it.
Killed him. Yeah.
Can you remember the way that the police told you they thought that you had done it? What was the evidence? What were the circumstances that led them to think that you were the killer?
Well, there was no evidence or circumstances. He just said, "Hey, you murdered this guy. And I tried to explain to him that, well, how could I be the murderer? And he was a friend of mine, and I loaned him my car. But the officer, he was not hearing it. And eventually I was arrested and bonded over for court and convicted.
Yeah. Do you remember the lawyer who represented you at the trial
It
then?
was, lawyer, I think it was...
It doesn't matter what the name was, but I'm just trying to get at how helpful that lawyer might have been to you.
Well, actually, I had two lawyers. One, I switched from one to the other, and they believed in my innocence, but at the same time, they couldn't prove it at the time because the witnesses was coerced and threatened by the officer, the arresting officer. I didn't realize this until like 20-something years later. Eventually, Claudia, she stepped up and did a thorough investigation, and here I am today.
Yeah, yeah. Madeline, unfortunately, this is not, I mean, it's an uncommon story, but it's not a one-of-a-kind story. It's not that uncommon. There are a lot of people in our prisons who don't belong there.
Absolutely. And the first thing that Danny said to us when we met him outside the prison that day was, there are so many more innocent people inside. We need to start helping them immediately. So to think someone who could spend 32 years in a nightmare, the first thing they want to do is help others to get out of this nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about your involvement in the case and how you came to be representing Danny.
Well, I'm fortunate to be on a team of people that are very committed to this issue. And actually, before I was even a full-blown attorney, this team had already found the evidence. Claudia had already brought it to the team, and a lot of people who aren't attorneys spent a lot of time going through evidence, trying to figure out what actually happened here. And it takes an entire team of people to put this all together. And I'm not going to sit here and take credit for the hard work of what others did. If it wasn't for Claudia and other investigators knocking on people's doors and getting the true story, it took 15 years.
Yeah, yeah. The story about the police and their effort to coerce the witnesses, how did it become evident that that's what happened in Danny's trial? For a lot of people that this happens to, no one ever goes back to look. What was it that suggested that there was something wrong here?
I think it was when the witnesses said, when confronted with an investigator who cares about Danny, they said, yes, I was coerced, I was very scared. And, maybe after so many years, the fear of your family being hurt from telling the truth went away a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Danny, can you tell us just a little about what life is like now for you and what you're trying to do?
Well, it's breathtaking. Within the weeks I've been out, I've been trying to. I haven't had much sleep because I'm trying to take in much as I can, and
Right.
Detroit is really beautiful now, and I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah. What about your future? I mean, you've lost 32 years of your life. You can't get that back.
Right.
But talk about what you would like to build for yourself now.
Well, my focus is on first my children. I haven't had the chance to watch them grow up. I haven't had the chance to watch them graduate. I haven't had the chance to really bond with them. And that's what I want to do. And hopefully they get to know me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. I mean, I think everyone can understand
Absolutely.
how emotional that issue is for you. Madeline, one of the things you guys are working on is also this idea that there should be some compensation
Absolutely.
For Danny. This is a controversial issue in our, let's try to find a tissue somewhere for Danny. This idea that when people are wronged this way, they should be compensated. There is a state law that says that it's still difficult to get the right thing to happen.
It is still very difficult, and it's not automatic. And there's still a lot of procedural hurdles one has to go through in order to even consider getting this money, to even put it in front of the state and say, I deserve this. It's, a lawsuit is involved and takes an exonerated individual to sue the state. And so there's still many high evidentiary hurdles you have to meet. So the process is difficult. And I know there's a lot of exonerated individuals hoping that to get something back from all those years.
Right. What about work and just building your life? What kinds of things are you looking forward to?
Well, right now, I don't have a birth certificate or a license or Social Security card. My intent is, my plan is to get a job.
And that's because those things were lost when you were?
Well, when I was released, none of those things was given to me or provided to me by the state. So right now, they're working to try to speed things up to give me my birth certificate. And hopefully I can go from there.
Yeah. Well, it is really great that that you're out, and that the person who did this is the person who did this going to be paying for that somehow?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
The justice has revealed to this month, at this time, I'm hoping that they move forward in the investigation to apprehend the guys that were responsible for my friend's death.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, and I mean, I can't express how overwhelming the feeling is of joy that that you're finally able to live your life.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you guys for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen.
All right, coming up, Wayne County takes a step toward reducing wrongful conviction rates. But first, here's a 1996 Detroit Black Journal conversation with State Representative Edie Vaughan about a controversy surrounding juvenile correctional facilities.
Representative Vaughan, you have been talking for some weeks now about how youthful offenders are being transported outstate and being used as a cheap labor force. Explain.
Well, what is happening is that at some of the juvenile institutions around the state, some are privately run and some are run by the state of Michigan, we understand that young people are being transferred out of state to do work and to be incarcerated in other facilities without the knowledge of their parents. And in these facilities out of state, many times they involve them in athletic affairs. Many times they involve them in work gangs to go out and do prison work. The prison industrial complex obviously is very alive and well across this nation. And we think that it's time that we stop sending our young people out of state without the knowledge of their parents. And I take the position that if Michigan is so intent on putting every young African American in jail, and by the way, 100% of the people who are being sent out of state are African Americans. If they're so intent on doing that, then let them suffer the costs of keeping all these young people in jail.
Wayne County is changing the way it handles public defense cases. The county's brought in the Neighborhood Defender Service to improve fairness and cut down on wrongful conviction rates for indigent clients. The national organization takes a holistic approach, providing support services for clients during and after their criminal cases. Here to tell us more are Wayne County Executive Warren Evans and Shante Parker, who is the Managing Director of the Neighborhood Defender Service of Detroit. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
So let's talk about the idea to bring in the Neighborhood Defender Service here to the city of Detroit. We just heard a story from Danny Burton about his wrongful conviction. He's not the only one.
No, unfortunately, he's not. I think history has shown that, whether it's DNA reversals or other sorts of things. And I think one of the realities that people need to understand who aren't involved in the criminal justice system is probably 90 to 93% of all people charged with criminal cases that go through the process wind up pleading guilty. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean 93% are guilty.
Right.
It means there's not a substantive process for people to feel comfortable that they can maintain their innocence and have a reasonable defense. And that's not a new problem. That's a decades-old problem. We realize that, and with the help of the state on this issue with some additional funding, we thought it was critically important to get a defender service in that was going to spend time with defendants. I mean, if you've been around this thing long, and I have been around a long time,
You
I mean,
have
many
been around a long
times,
time, yes.
many times defendants see their attorney first when they're in a holding cell prior to their preliminary
The
examination.
exam,
I mean,
sure.
that's not reasonable.
Yeah.
And so we see this as an opportunity to have a law firm, defender's firm, that has, first of all, more lawyers than the previous defender's office had, twice as many, and they still handle the same number of cases. And they have investigators, they have other people whose job it is to service those clients, those indigent defendants who come before them. And, you know, I'm watching very, very closely because my reality would eventually be that now they handle 25% of the cases. I would love to see that at some point, if the data supports itself, to be 50%, because I think then there's an opportunity to see what quality of work we get out of half of the cases,
And
what
then
quality of work we're
what
getting out
happens
of the other half
half.
of the cases,
Yeah.
and move forward. And it's going to cost the county additional money.
Yeah.
You know, prosecutors are already talking about, you know, there are more motions being filed on behalf of criminal defendants. Well, that's what the justice
That's part of
system
the
asks
process,
for,
right?
part of the
Yeah.
process, and we'll figure out our way through that.
Yeah. So talk about some of the things that Neighborhood Defender Services does differently.
Yeah. Well, Neighborhood Defender Service takes a holistic approach, as you mentioned, and what that means is that a client gets a team of people who's working for them. Not only is an attorney going to meet with that client pretty quickly after they're arrested, after they're assigned to our case, we're assigned to the case, but they've also got investigators who are going to go out and look for witnesses to prepare for the preliminary exam. So when the attorney comes to preliminary exam, they're really ready to do a robust cross-examination.
Yeah.
We've also got social workers who are going to talk to clients to figure out their social histories, understand what's brought them into contact with the criminal justice system, and provide some resources and services and connections to try to help them deal with those problems that are going on in their lives besides the criminal case.
Yeah. This is a program that's been at work in some other states. Talk about the success or the difference, I guess, in outcomes that you've seen in other places.
Yeah, so the NDS was founded in Harlem almost 30 years ago. Next year will be our 30th anniversary. And it was sprung out of this idea that there were public defenders who were working in traditional offices but knew that they could do more by being based in the community. So they put the office on 125th Street right in the middle of the community, right? That they understood that community was important, so they went out and got to know the people in that community so that those folks would see them as their law office. So when something happened in their lives related to the criminal justice system, they could go right in and get that support. For over 30 years, almost 30 years, we've been really looking at how does this model work and how can we improve it. So increasing the number of social workers we have, investigators we've had, to see that we see better results when you have this holistic model.
Yeah.
And we're thankful that Wayne County really saw that and invited us to come be a part of this community.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we're busy right now trying to still build a new jail, which we need for lots of different reasons. One is that, you know, we've got jails that are almost 100 years old now. That we're still housing people in. This seems like, and there are a lot of people who are upset that we're spending the money that we are on a new prison. This seems like the flip side maybe of that argument that, yeah, we do need a new prison, but we also need to deal differently with the people who might end up.
I think that's exactly it. It's a holistic approach that goes a little farther than just the indigent defendants, but yeah, I mean, people have a right to be in a constitutionally adequate facility. None of us would like for people to be there. Well, none of us with any sense would like for that to be the case.
Yeah.
But it's a holistic approach. People need to have an adequate defense. And the county has funded over the last a couple of years the conviction integrity unit in the prosecutor's office to look at and actually put some effort into checking on situations where people might have been wrongly convicted. And we know it happens, and it's just an issue of discussion until it hits you.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's nothing worse possibly in the world than to be accused of something you didn't do, and for the system to take part of your life away as a result of it. I can't even fathom how that would feel. And I've seen it happen enough to know that we have an obligation in the county to do better.
Is this an indictment of the public defender's office we have, or an indictment of the way we fund the public defender's office?
I think it's more an indictment of the way we fund the process than it is any particular unit there. Again, and people will get mad at me when I say that, but it's assembly line justice anywhere in the country, in big urban centers. Anytime you have over 90 out of 100 people in criminal cases pleading guilty, there is a predisposition to just keep it moving. And if the predisposition is to keep it moving, nuances of justice, keep sliding down the scale. And to the extent that we can remedy some of that, and it's going to take money, not just this, but others. But I think you have to set a priority as to what is really important in life, and certainly people's individual freedoms and their ability to have justice in terms of their solid representation is critical.
Is there anything about Wayne County or Detroit that stands out to you as different from some of the other places that this is taking place?
I mean, as Mr. Evans indicated, there's injustice happening everywhere in this country. But for me, Wayne County and Detroit is a really interesting place to come and bring this model because of the amount of Black folks that live in Detroit and Wayne County, right? Yes. And what we know is that at every step of the process, Black folks and people of color are disproportionately more likely to get the worst end of the stick, right? For example, Mr. Burton shared his story, and what we know is that Black folks who are convicted of murder are 50% more likely to be innocent than white people who are convicted of murder. And that's just one snapshot at the wrongful conviction piece of it.
Right.
And so for me, as a Black woman, to be a part of bringing this kind of robust, holistic representation to a community that probably so desperately needs it, not only because of what we know about our just criminal justice system in this country, but because what we know it does to Black folks, and to be in a place where we're the majority of the people in this community, that's really sort of exciting and important to me to be able to raise the level of representation that folks are getting.
Well, congratulations on the idea, and congratulations on bringing this great program to Detroit. We will see how it unfolds over the next few years.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, that's our program for today. You can go to AmericanBlackJournal.org to get more information about our guests and to check out past episodes. And you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.